I have to hand it to WMHT. They were really plugging this show quite a bit.
Yes.
Really pleased by it. They're, you know, Rob Brown is a mensch, a total mensch.
Mensch.
He, you know, he was very, how shall I say, instrumental in putting the show together. He heard about our little Zoom sessions, and he approached me about doing this, and he wanted something more than just playing concert music. So
Yeah.
that's how this all came about.
The commentary was very, very good. We really enjoyed it. It came through very beautifully.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Derek, I think
How many weeks are you going to be doing?
Sorry. When are done, David?
Yeah, I was just going to say that you hit a really an ideal balance between the music and the interview and the conversation and the comments. It was, I think, just right. You did an excellent job.
Yeah.
Yes.
My question
I just slapped it all together. Rob Brown is the master editor. So yeah, I mean, look, I think you know me by now that I don't like the sound of my own voice. I like to hear the music too. So, you know, you're going to get plenty of music with these shows. There'll be lots and lots of music with these shows. Ellen Dean.
I missed who was the person who promoted this most.
Rob Brown, who's
Rob Brown was okay.
Yeah.
That's the name I missed.
Around.
Your
So Rob, you know, he programs how many hours of music on MHT every single day? It's about 8 hours of music.
Yeah, but I don't understand his programming at all. I mean, you know, it's one from column A and one from column B and a half of this. It's like looking at 1/4 of the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
It's my thing.
How do you really feel?
Well, I got invited to have a Zoom talk with Robert Altman. He's doing 3 of them. Other people must have gotten invitations as well. No? Okay.
No.
I'm doing it Wednesday morning. I plan to talk us up.
Well, good. Robert, he's really, you know, he's a champion of us. You know, the station really looks after us. I think they see the value in the series, and
Absolutely.
They do a great job. You know, I think it's tough. You know, it's tough to turn a buck in classical music with my series, with the radio and everything. So, you know, they're to be commended to what they do to the community.
But what you are, this programming is a great commodity. Cheapening it too much, but it's wonderful for them because it is real and it isn't canned, and it's, you know, in depth, and it's interesting, and it's great sound, great performances. They, you know, why wouldn't they want it?
Thank you. Yeah, I was very pleased. You know, I was very adamant about not being restricted in what I was presenting, and I never, ever want to dumb down anything. And I think that with classical music, sometimes that happens. You hear a lot of Sousa marches and things on the radio, and you know, I think that this music is glorious, and I think that if you bring performances by very talented, you know, world-class ensembles, and have some commentary by somebody who knows a little something, very little something, you know, it makes for interesting programming.
Nice to hear the Doric performance again, and they really are an extraordinary quartet, and it was a beautiful performance. And you
How did you get the
very well.
Touch to return to call?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the Doric is you know, they're a favorite of mine, and with good reason. And John Myers Co. I thought, you know, it was funny because you noticed in the interview, like there wasn't a lot of back and forth. He just sort of went with it, and you know, he's a really you know, very intelligent person, musician, and very passionate about what he's doing in the music. And I think that's, you know, a trait that is what I find, what I really seek out in artists on the series, people who are serious artists, who really are focused on their artistry and really, you know, not about flash or commerce or anything, really about communicating something meaningful to us. It was fun to hear that the Belcher, you know, that early E flat major quartet. I don't know if anybody was at that concert, but you know, we had to. I got a phone call at 6
I remember.
Yeah, I got a phone call at 6 o'clock that morning.
I remember that.
From the violist of the quartet, and they were in North Carolina, and they were stuck. And we really weren't sure if they were going to make it. And we took a chance, and I had a choice between flying from North Carolina to Philly to Albany, and then the concert, you know, maybe they'd make the connection and the concert would be presented 2 hours late, or we would take a chance and fly them to Syracuse, hire a car for them, and drive them to the hall. And so we did that, and I had to email the entire audience that morning saying, hey, we're going to start late. We're going to start at 4 o'clock. And sure enough, they showed up at the hall, I think about, I think 3:45. And they just walked in, they literally threw food in their face, changed clothes, walked on stage. Then there was a post-concert reception because the concert was sponsored by UCall at Union College. And, you know, we were all exhausted. You know, they'd been traveling all day. I was up since 6 and frantic the whole day. And we're sitting at the reception, and Corinna Belcher, the first violinist, she comes to me, she just whispered, she's like, do you think we can go back to the hall and rehearse for a couple hours?
Oh.
And I said, of course.
Yeah.
Energy.
So yeah, so I hung around and they rehearsed for another couple hours after that, and yeah, and away they went. So
Amazing.
an amazing group.
Yeah, very nice group, right? So let's see.
So what I tried to illuminate in this one is that, you know, the two composers, that connected the classical with the romantic are Beethoven and Schubert, for sure. They're the two real, where they start their careers in a certain idiom and then end their careers in a whole other place, influenced by these poets and what was happening in the romantic movement. What tends to happen in music history, it lags a little bit behind what happens in literary history and visual history. You know, for instance, the Impressionist movement in the art world, in the visual arts world, happened 10, 15 years before Debussy came about, and he was ascribed that moniker.
Derek, what do you think would have happened to Schubert's composition style if he'd lived another 30 years? Where would he have gone?
I think that I mean, it's obviously impossible for me to say, but I mean, I think that seeing the innovation in what he was doing in the late works, I think the sky's the limit as far as Mr. Schubert is concerned.
Because he would have been influenced by others, maybe, or would he have influenced others?
It's hard to say because, you know, Schubert operated on his own for the most part. He was this little niche, he was a niche composer with this circle of friends. Yeah, I think he met Beethoven once, briefly. But he wasn't a part of Vienna, you know, music society and culture. There's a lot of people, you know, many of his works were discovered well after he passed away.
Yeah.
But I think, and next week's show, WMHT, their website, it's my fault. They haven't posted what's to come. You know, I have finished now five shows. So next week I'm going to be focusing on the late masterworks of Schubert in the three genres of the quartet, lieder, and piano writing. And I think, Greg, those works speak to what could be possible after with Schubert.
Derek, is there a listing somewhere, either at WMHT or on the Capital Region Classical website, of the pieces that were played and will be played, so that people who want to go hear the whole piece can go? I know you mention it, but you know, things go by very quickly.
There will be, as I had said, right now, I didn't know that wasn't available on their website. So I created that literally today. And I have one more short show that I want to include on that, which I'm about to record. So that will be up this week for sure, Ellen Dean. And I will incorporate that. I'll create a page on our website that has these shows that's more clear for sure.
Derek, did you enjoy doing this?
You know, I have to say, David, it's you know, with these with our Zoom sessions and with this show, I've gotten a real kick out of it. I have to tell you, yes, I've really enjoyed them. As I've said before, I'm not an academic. I don't claim to be an academic, but I do have some background in what I'm doing, and I think that these muscles that I'm exercising, I haven't exercised in many years, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Derek, you're very good at it. I mean, you're very skilled. You're very skilled, and you come off very well. So give yourself a pat on the back.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think you sound very, very good. I mean, you are engaging and you speak clearly, not too fast. You know, you engage the listener.
Well, this is why I wanted to have these Zoom sessions, so I can just get all this adulation. That was really the key.
Why not?
Yeah. That was really the goal. It wasn't about speaking about anything.
Why not?
But I have to say that, like, the crowning and the reason why I included John Myerscough in this program was the significance of the Schubert G major quartet. And he was not, it wasn't hyperbole that John was saying that this is one of the pinnacles of the repertoire, this particular work. It's so monumental in its emotion, its scope, and its communication. I think what he was talking about in his interview about the interplay between major and minor.
Yes.
Especially at the end, because he's resolving in minor, resolving in major, resolving in minor, resolving in major and minor, and finally G major at the end.
Right.
And he, you know, there's this, as we spoke about with Brahms, it's unsettling. It's never, major is not happy, minor is not sad. You know, it's a more complex emotion in these keys. And I think that's really what's so amazing about this piece. And these, you know, Schubert wrote many of his works, especially the later works, on such a large canvas. I mean, when I speak about Schumann saying that, you know, the Ninth Symphony, the Great C Major, is of heavenly length, you know, these pieces are typically 50 minutes long, many of his late works. And they're just these almost odysseys of emotion and expression. And draining, frankly. You know, draining.
Well, the quintets were almost an hour long.
Yes. Yeah. The cello quintet is, I think, 55 minutes. The Trout quintet is similar length. The two trios, the B flat and E flat major trio, they're both over 50 minutes.
Do you think
B
Mahler
flat major sonata, piano sonata.
Do you think Mahler was influenced?
I think they were all influenced by Schubert.
No, I just meant length. I always,
Bruckner.
Well, I mean, Mahler, you know, Mahler famously orchestrated the Schubert Death and the Maiden Quartet. Yeah. I mean, they're all aware. I mean, they, you know, they were all very deeply versed in these composers. Schubert is a titan in classical music.
Mhm.
Can I make one little suggestion,
Sure.
Eric? You know, for a group which is a wide variety of degrees of knowledge about this stuff, and you wanted to get across this notion of Schubert as a bridge figure between classical and romantic, I think that the point would have become even clearer had you stressed it a little bit more. You know, talk a little about what characterized the classical period, and listen for this in the earlier quartet, and then listen to how it opens up into this vast and scaled thing. And that I mean, you made the point, but I just thinking about the kind of audience and the range of audiences that would be listening to it, some greater emphasis and clarification of that might have been useful, just as a teaching device.
I mean, and that's the challenge, right? I mean, I only got X amount of time to fit in
Yeah,
context.
you took a long time.
I included, and if I include an interview with an artist, I have less time to illuminate. So it's all, you know, this is the thing. You know, educational. Ugh. I don't want to be a teacher. I don't, you know, I would like to just provide some insight and illuminate the topic and illuminate the composer and encourage further exploration, for sure.
Can I throw a little bit of a food for thought out there
Sure.
to responding to David's point? I mean, I'm not really a scholar in all of this stuff either. I just love the music and listen to it all the time. One of the things I've found as far as, you know, bridging and, you know, kind of transitioning from classical era to romantic era is, you know, in a lot of those classical era works, you have, you know, really the sonata form really hitting its apex, and composers sticking, you know, like pretty solidly to it. When they introduce a theme right off at the very beginning, you're going to hear like that exact same theme in the recapitulation. One of the things I love about the G major Schubert work tonight is how he plays around with that, and perhaps we could, you know, like listen or kind of keep in mind that as like this transitional point. In other words, the very beginning of the piece opens up in that quiet G major, and then, you know, has that strong G minor chord. And then the recapitulation, instead of doing the exact same thing, Schubert starts with G minor and then transitions to this quiet G major. So you're left wondering, are we now transitioning to, you know, from dark to light? You don't know where he's going to go with the rest of the movement, but that's something that I don't think would have happened, you know, in the classical era.
Absolutely, and I think John Myerscough mentioned that about like the sonata form is there, but it's so it's sort of, he messes with it so much that it's not so apparent as it would be in the early work of Schubert.
It was very interesting. The third one alternated between playful and serious, and it sounded almost as if it could be background music for a movie, for a movie.
Background music.
If it could be.
No, I'm just teasing.
Like
no,
that.
I'm just teasing. No, I mean, the contrast. I would say that this piece is almost operatic in its drama. It's so dramatic, this movie.
Yes, he did.
It's so dramatic.
Derek,
Yes.
I was wondering, it's kind of an aside, but I know you mentioned in the broadcast that Schubert had this sort of glorified salon thing with poets and artists, and that's where a lot of these pieces were played. But other than that, who were the contemporary audiences for his work?
It was really driven by these poets. I mean, honestly, it was his concerts were not a lot. He didn't have a lot of public concerts.
But he didn't have patronage, so.
Correct. He didn't have the Esterházys paying for him. He didn't have this.
And there were no public performances in those days.
He was very unknown in his lifetime, except amongst this circle.
31.
Yeah, it was really Schumann who brought, and Schumann also brought Bach's music back. That really brought Schubert's music into the spotlight. Yeah, during his life, he was not very well known. He was respected by other musicians, but he was not close to Beethoven's fame. Not close. So it was these salon concerts, and his extraordinary output. You know, he was so prolific in churning out these pieces. I forget what John had said. He mentioned how quickly he wrote the G major. It was, I forget what.
8 years, I think he said.
Yeah, it was just, you know, it was ridiculous for a piece of this scope and depth. You know, Schubert was really just like Bach. I mean, Bach, because it was perhaps earlier in his life. You know, Bach was known by the churchgoers in Leipzig at the Thomaskirche, and he was known by musicians in his lifetime. He wasn't very well known in his lifetime at all.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's really amazing.
One of the things that I wonder, and it really has nothing to do with this, so I just throw it out because I'm is what was popular music at the time?
There's always been popular music. There's
Right.
always been, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder what it was during Schubert's time, for instance.
I can't say, but there was popular music. I mean, that was happening.
Wasn't there always folk music?
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ballads and
Dances, ballads.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But I sort of wonder what was going on, you know, sort of contemporaneously with all this. It's
Well,
another,
you know,
another.
There were probably street musicians and music happening in the streets, but Schubert's music was going on in the salons and.
Right.
Yeah.
There were forms like, you know, like Ländler, like in the Alps and things, you know, these dances, these peasant dances that transferred over to the art music of the time.
And some of Schubert's Tyrolean, I mean, you know, he wrote a whole bunch of things that were very sort of Tyrolean sounding, his songs and short.
Hey, Derek, how did he support himself if he had no patrons?
His music was published. He was not, I mean, he scraped by. He did not do well. He was not, his music, he did get some works published, and he got by.
Well,
he made some money.
Sorry.
In general, most musicians of that time probably had to scrimp by. I suspect, well, Haydn, of course, had the Esterházy family supporting him. But I mean, did contract work, for lack of a better expression.
Right.
But I mean, I remember reading about Bach. You know, he did all kinds of stuff to stay alive. You know, because his payment for being the Kapellmeister in Leipzig was not very much. You know,
but it was a steady gig. I mean, yeah. Beethoven was really the first one where he stood alone in that he was a composer, a standalone composer that would rely on commissions. And certainly he befriended the aristocracy, you know, the Razumovskys, you know, and things of that nature. He was very keen on doing it, but he lived on commissions and publishing and always fought for works publishers. And he famously always fought with the publishing house Breitkopf Härtel in Leipzig, which has been, you know, was the prominent music publisher in Germany for 200 years. fighting over commissions and fighting over payments for his works. Yeah, tough racket. Haydn had it great. Haydn was very comfortable. Very comfortable.
Derek, Schubert did make money off his dances, his German dances.
German dances.
It was among the few things that he could actually sell that people wanted to buy. And they're really lovely pieces of music that are still really played as piano pieces.
Yes.
But he actually made money on that. He didn't make money off the sonatas or the quartets or symphonies or anything, but that was a popular music.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, the G major quartet was published posthumously.
The third one, yeah.
Yeah. And as I said, it was the last piece, it was the last quartet that he had written. Those
the
three,
contrast in that one was wonderful. It was like almost a conversation between the violin. Really, I kept wondering where it was going, and it really held my interest. And it got playful now and then, but then heavy. So that was a beautiful one.
Well, the three last quartets of Schubert are astounding. I mean, the Rosamunde, especially, that's the one that's not done as often. Rosamunde, Death of the Maiden Quartet, and the G major quartet. They're just, they're titanic works. I mean, they're just so important. Next week's program will feature the Death of the Maiden Quartet, performance by the Belcher Quartet.
Death of the Maiden Quartet.
Okay.
The second movement for which the quartet is named. It's basically a theme and variation on an earlier song of Schubert's Death of the Maiden. So, any other thoughts about this? I wanted to play a little bit of my interview with John that didn't appear on the radio program. That might be slightly controversial, but as a teaser. But any other thoughts about the program?
I thought that the technical content of the G major was much more than what you had in the first two quartets. And it almost sounded like if you were going to ask me who was the composer, I wouldn't have known whether it was Bartok or Schubert.
Yeah.
The first one was more lyric.
Yes.
More lyric. And the second one was much less and sort of fragile. And then the third one was entirely different from the other two.
Right.
The chords and everything else. Chords. Yeah.
That was the point. So let me play some of my interview. And basically, so John and I were talking about the state of classical music at the moment. And I thought maybe I'd play a little bit of it and we can talk a little bit about what we were saying, okay? There's one blue word, I will warn you. So here we go.
That's funny.
Sound.
Can't hear.
There's no sound? Sorry.
No.
Sorry, hold on. That's terrible. Hold on. I've never shared video. Let's try this again. I think I can't share the video with you, only the sound. Let me just share the sound with you.
Okay.
Here we go.
I think, and all these people who sort of like do one concert in the States, then they're back to Europe, then they go off to Japan for a concert, and then back here for like a week, and then to Korea or whatever, like this constant backwards and forwards stuff. And these like smaller, I mean, this all the kind of like second and third tier of musicians, sort of like going to the States to play with some random orchestra in some backwater. Like, I don't know what's going to happen to that.
It's going to go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this just doesn't seem sustainable.
The business is definitely going to contract. I really do believe that. And, you know, me being the elitist snob that I am, I was like, well, that may not be a horrible thing.
Yeah, completely. I mean, there's so much shit going on in the classical music world.
That's right.
Like, it is an opportunity just to question, what are we actually wanting to get from music as an audience, and what are we wanting to experience, and why are we doing this? No one's doing it really to make money, but are we doing it because we really believe we have to, and we really believe in what we're saying about these pieces, or are we just doing it just to sort of try and make a bit of money? Or I think it's a good time for reflection. If people reflect, I don't know if they are going to, but
I think that I think that that's a huge problem with classical music, is that it's just this big lump, classical music, and because there's all of this other sort of schlock that's happening, it's all lumped together, and then therefore the performances become less compelling. When they're not performed well, and then then you have apathy toward classical music. And it's a real
people who
problem,
find it boring. It's because it is often really boring.
Because it's not played very well. I mean, I really firmly believe that.
Shocking.
Well, I have to say that one of the things that bothers me about your slot on the radio is that you are sandwiched between Rob Brown and Mindy Ratner. Speaking of schlock on the radio, it's too bad because the bookends are not great music, or they're just excerpts of music.
Shit. Oh, okay.
I think, what troubles me in trends in classical music is sort of when you see programming where they take the audience for granted, and they really don't appreciate that the incredible, I mean, I think this music is incredible, and it doesn't need to be dumbed down or needs bells and whistles. But conversely, that the performance of classical music, and I had a conversation earlier today about, a lot of organizations use superlatives and lots of adjectives to describe what they're doing, and what defines world class, and what is really world-class performers versus performers. And it muddies waters, and then the general public who don't come to concerts a lot will go to a concert randomly thinking that something is what it should be, and then it's not really the best representation of what it should be. And that's what we were speaking of. And how can we do this better? How do we go about this in a better way to preserve and to sustain and to develop this art form that I've dedicated my life to?
Well, I think one of the important parts of what we're doing, Derek, is precisely that you're featuring pretty much throughout the season some works that people know, but many works that people don't know so well. And one of the things that I find dismaying about the radio programs that Ellen Dean was talking about, as well as, frankly, a lot of orchestral programming, is please don't just play me the same olds. I want to hear stuff that I've never heard and don't know well. But I have to acknowledge that probably many in audiences really do need the comfort of at least some piece that they know better or is familiar or that they love, whatever. I don't know. I think that larger classical music has a bit been dumbed down, and we're not into that, which I think is one of the wonderful features of Capital Region Classical.
I think that it's in order for audiences to appreciate the music more, they need to listen more. We need to find ways for them to listen more, because the more you hear it, the more you understand. I mean, it's the case. I mean, I used to sit next to somebody at the BSO, and he was a fanatic music lover and goer, and he would listen to whatever the program was at the BSO. He'd listen to it 12 times before he ever came to the concert. And lots of people do that. I'm not one of them, but but the more you understand and recognize, the more you, the more discerning you are and the more interested you are.
I mean, I think, yes, I agree with all of that. I want to take it back, and my whole approach to programming, frankly, is artist-driven. That even the most compelling program on a page where you're looking, wow, this is a great program, it's got to be executed. And sometimes we forget, we put the cart before the horse, that we're so focused on program and what it is and the repertoire and everything, but who's playing that repertoire? Is it really someone who's extraordinary and can communicate this repertoire in a unique and world-class, throw it away, in that fashion? And that sometimes gets lost in the mix. And I think that's the challenge of classical music appreciation. And I've said before, I've said on Zoom before, where I sit in the hall and if I hear, I need a certain bell rung when I hear repertoire, or where you hear a moment, and I'm speaking from a position where I obviously I'm well versed in the repertoire, and I've heard a lot of concerts, and I know when those moments in the music are coming. I know they're coming, and when it doesn't happen, it really kills me, and when it's not executed well by a musician. And I guess what we were talking about is that very notion, is that, everybody is experiencing the challenges of COVID these days. And the music industry, many industries are changing, obviously, because of this. And what I had said was that the business will contract, I believe. I think there will be less concerts, there will be less opportunities, there'll be less touring for artists, just as John was saying. So how do we get those things that are going to be happening to compel those to come listen to it?
I had a couple of just little, I think, more or less random thoughts, and they probably are just nonsense. But one thing I think is a key is that music, and particularly live music, is communication. And is communication with the composer, the artist, and the audience. And that's one thing which we try to replicate in using the media, but it's never the same thing as having that sense. And I guess I'm a little bit more, I guess I'm more of a pushover than you guys were in that interview, because being an amateur musician, I appreciate the extraordinary amount of work that goes in even when a performance isn't quote unquote world class. I'm so much aware of even a performance that I will do, you know, when me or myself or a quartet I'm with is at its best, and the enormous gap between that and even a more or less average professional performance. And I'm in awe of the talent and the work that goes into it. And even though I'm very much aware of the difference between the magic of when the Doric or the Belchea will happen, all of a sudden you sit back and I say, my God, that's really revelatory. And that's the magic that one almost lives for. But in the spaces in between those moments of magic, there's wonderful stuff that goes on in terms of communication. And I can enjoy it and appreciate it and love it, and not only wait for those quote unquote world-class performances. I enjoy even those that I'm somewhat less excited about, because I understand what went into it, and I'm hearing the music, and I understand the artists are working at it and they're doing their best. The only thing that I would not be patient for is an artist who someone said it, I'm sorry, I didn't remember who it was, to say, who takes the audience for granted. I mean, the artists have to put in to their performance, even if it's not going to come off as world class. The artists who are kind of taking the audience for granted and not making that investment, I don't have much patience for. But for those who are investing in their work and doing it and spending all these hours in preparation, sometimes on rare occasions it will come off as that moment of magic. But there are all these interstices where it may not be magic, but it's wonderful, and it's communication, it's an experience. And again, that three-part communication of artist, composer, and audience, that I think makes it worthwhile. And I don't kind of look disparagingly on those that aren't quite at that level.
It's
I
not.
know I was
Yeah.
not. I was not being. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we're speaking to is you're coming from an inside perspective on things, but think about the general music, somebody who's getting into classical music. And, you know, we're not speaking about amateurs enjoying music. I mean, no one's disparaging that, of course. I mean, that's not anything. But when things are always put on an equal playing field, and that's what we were speaking to in classical music, because there's so little, you know, there's such intimidation about even approaching classical music from the outside, right? People who aren't, who haven't been exposed to it and everything, and dipping their toe in for the first time to a performance that maybe is not indicative of the repertoire, let's say, is problematic for the art form. And I think that, you know, I think that's what we were speaking to.
I don't think you become a discerning listener. By going to one concert a year, hearing one performance of a Schubert G major quartet, you have to listen to these things. You have to make comparative listening. And you do that not by going to concerts, but by listening on a music service or something like that. It's beautiful. I mean, the one I enjoy is called Adagio. And you can go through and, like I'm into Beethoven's sonatas, they're my favorite of all. And there's several performers who've generated new performances of the 32 Beethoven sonatas. And you can sit there and you can go back and forth. A few years ago, Deutsche Grammophon put out an app on an iPad. It was the Beethoven Ninth. There were 4 performances of it, 4 different conductors. I think there was a Berlin Philharmonic was on twice, and then there's the Vienna Philharmonic, and the other one was John Elliott Gardner's group. Mm-hmm. And you could. The beautiful thing about this thing was, you could go from a performance by Karajan to Bernstein, and you end up. You're always going to the same spot in the music, and you could compare these guys, and it was great. And you know, you do this, and you can develop some taste, if for lack of a better name for it. But you know, you learn to appreciate one performer better than others. And it's kind of an interesting way to do it. The other thing is, you just have to listen to music. You can't go to concerts every day.
That's right.
I mean, so you go and you subscribe to a service, Apple Music or whatever, and you can sit there and you can listen back and forth and it's just enjoy it. That way, when you do go to a concert, you can say, oh, well, yeah, this guy is world class, or for lack of a better term. But you just can't go to 13 concerts a year and say, hey, I'm here. I know everything. You just don't. So anyway, you really gotta listen. Anyway,
Absolutely.
I got out my soapbox now.
No better. That's a great speech. No, I had said that in an earlier Zoom. Like the power of listening, and listening always, because it never ends. To hear different interpretations of pieces and learning the repertoire, and then hearing different interpretations of repertoire over and over again formulates, your opinions when you go to the concert, and familiarizing yourself with the repertoire to where, when you know that these moments that touch you, this is what we're talking about, this reaction to the music where it moves you. And knowing, and yeah, I mean, you just got to keep listening, always.
This is the nature of art, all art. I mean, you don't look at a painting once. You don't go to a ballet once. I mean, if this is what you're interested in, people don't go to opera one time. It's whatever kind of art you're talking about. It's you want to keep looking, you want to keep listening, you want to keep participating, or whatever it is. It's and it's constantly a learning situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's always, I always think that it's, music is perhaps the most challenging because it's not tangible. It's something that is, you hear and it gets processed and goes, and maybe it's different when it's visual. I think that it's, and maybe this is an overstatement, that it's easier to absorb an abstraction in visual art than it is in music. But repetition and knowledge, deepening your understanding about the music can't hurt. Right? So, but what we were speaking to, I just want to get back to the basic tenet, is that we're in a business, the music business. I'm in a business, that there's a lot of stuff that's happening, and it gets all equated. Everything is sort of equal, even in critical pieces in newspapers. We're all criticized on the same plane, always. And it doesn't matter what level the group or the ensemble is at. And it's a challenge, because the public then perceives it as being on an equal playing field.
A few years ago, there was, I don't remember who the guy was, but he was a solo piano, and he was playing the Kammerklavier Sonata of Beethoven at one of the performances. And I walked out of there and said, I've never heard that sonata played that way in my life. So I don't know if the guy was ad-libbing a little bit or what, but it was totally different than what I recall the sonata sounding like. So sometimes one of these guys, they say, "Oh shoot, I can't remember what the heck." I'm like, "Oh, I'll just do it this way."
That was Pierre-Laurent Aimar, the French pianist. Yeah. Oh. Not known for his Beethoven.
Well,
but that's what, I mean, just to get back, this is what makes it wonderful. This is like listening and hearing these things. It really, really makes it, that much more impactful. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with these Zoom sessions and my radio show. And, educational, I don't like that word. I just really want you to be uplifted and to get a little insight into the repertoire and a little bit of background into the music. And that encourages further exploration. It's never going to be all encompassing what I do, never.
But Derek, every time you listen to a piece of music, it's educational. It's like, you know, I mean, you don't have to say it is, it just is.
Maybe.
I am not a musician, so I find myself at a disadvantage listening to all the wise and interesting comments that all of you make. But I do enjoy listening to music. And one point that you discussed earlier, which I did not quite understand, is an expression about taking the audience for granted. What do you mean by that? What happens? What is the offense, and how is it practiced?
Well, it's a good question. I could present all Beethoven. I can bring a pianist here and have them do the Pathetique Sonata, the Appassionata Sonata. I can do all the greatest hits of classical music. I can program this in such a way to encourage ticket sales. And in the orchestra world, and part of the great horror of COVID was that this is the Beethoven year, and they were all programming the 9 symphonies, which obviously is great, but they're also money-making popular programs. I can conceive of programs to give you the classical music's greatest hits, but I'm not terribly interested in that.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in, my approach is always artist-centric. It's always artist-centric. I try to pick the very best artist I can and allow them to play the repertoire that they're most compelled to play.
Derek, do you ever ask a performer to play a certain series of pieces, or do they come in to see you and say, well, we're going to play this, this, and this? How's it work anyway? I'm curious.
In my whole tenure at this series, I've dictated one piece on one program.
Okay. Oh, I mean, but if you're going to get performances that these guys, oh, we know how to do that, you know, we'll just go right along. And I'm wondering if to become a little bit more of an musical explorer, that you ask someone to play, I don't know, something like Schoenberg or some unknown composer in the past. You know, I just wonder if you ever approach any group like that to say, would you please play such and such? Have you ever? Of course, now you're going to ask me for examples, and I can't think of a single one right now.
I hate to be black and white, but of course, there are instances where I talk. It's always in conversation with an artist.
Okay.
The one instance where I dictated the piece was this actual performance of the Schubert G major.
Oh.
I had originally had a date with the Doric Quartet on a Sunday, and then the following Sunday I had a program with Mark Padmore and Jonathan Biss doing late Schubert. They did the A major piano sonata and Schubert's Schwanengesang. There was a problem with the Doric date, and I didn't want to lose them.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose to present them on the Friday prior to the Sunday with Mark Padmore and Jonathan Biss.
Mm-hmm.
So literally 2 days before the program. And I said, it would be great to have a Schubert work so we can tie the two together.
Well, the other thing is a typical musical group, a quartet, a trio, whatever, how large is their repertoire? I mean, how many pieces, I really don't know, how many pieces of music are these people really competent at, or barely competent at, or really world-class performers at? What size, what numbers of pieces are we talking about? I mean,
the large number. When I book dates, I'm offered a choice of programs that are offered to me by the quartet's pianists. Pianists tend to be more stringent, many times because that's a program that they're playing in Carnegie Hall. So I have to do that program as a warm-up before they go to Carnegie Hall. but then I will choose the program that is offered and mix and match sometimes within the programs that's offered to me. Sometimes I do special projects. I would like to do more special projects, but they cost more money. Because you're bringing in, if I were to do, like I spoke about doing a Ravel program, where I'd like to do the Chanson Maracas and I would have to do a mixed program, that would be more expensive for me than bringing a string quartet to play a program. So there are factors involved in this. And since we're this fledgling organization and I'm trying not to be extravagant with artist fees, I need to be very mindful of what I'm spending. So it's not that I would say, oh no, I never wanted to have Schoenberg or pick a Schoenberg. You know, I have projects in my head that I keep working on that come to fruition sometimes, take a couple of years to come to fruition. But I'm also doing the commissioning. You know, we've been commissioning new works. And again, I work with the artists in doing that. Our commission this season with Matthew Walcoin was a genesis of a conversation over a beer with the Brentano Quartet. I wanted to commission a piece, and I said, well, who are you interested in? And they told me who they like. I listened to some music. I said, okay, let's look into it. And that's how it came to be. And then it was, you know, it was a 2-commission project. We were the sole commissioners of the first piece with the Brentano Quartet. And then this season we had the co-commission where we were the lead commissioners with Carnegie Hall, La Jolla Music Society, and Houston DeCamera. But we were the lead commissioners as a result of that conversation. So yes, I would love to put together Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire. And that's something that I've been looking at over the past 3 years, and I just haven't been able to do it yet. So, yeah.
Just in terms of how these quartets work, and tell me if I'm wrong, because you certainly know much more about it than I do. But the great quartets, I mean, they can, over the course of the years, they will have a vast repertoire. But in any one particular season, don't they generally prepare a few programs which they will do on their tour in a number of different places? And those are the things that they are very well practiced in, and they will mix that kind of a program and do that quite a few times over the course of the season, even though that's not a limit to what their skills or their repertoire is, but it's what they're focusing on for that particular season. Am I wrong about that?
That's exactly right. So I'm offered typically 2 or 3 programs by a quartet, and I choose the program from that. And I try not to do, again, getting back to Ray, I try not to do the war horses. I try not to just keep doing these quartets that are played over and over again. I try to mix it up a bit. And it's usually the second piece in the program that I try to, you know, there's always something new in the middle. I always try to do that in my programming. It's important to mix things up. So, any other questions?
I think that the more one knows about music, the more interested he or she is to hear new pieces. Somebody that doesn't know a hell of a lot feels more comfortable with well-known pieces. It builds one's own confidence, if you will. But the more you know, perhaps, the more you should be or are interested in learning more or seeing what new happens. There are some pieces that you hear, and I remember 3 or 4 instances in my life where I was totally magnetized is not the right word, but well, let me use that word, by listening a piece of music that was well played. One instance was in Albany, of all places, when the Gewandhaus was here with Kurt Masur 30 years ago, and or thereabouts, and they performed, among other things, the Brahms Third, and then the double concerto afterwards, if I remember correctly. I was sitting on my seat, and I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I had lost myself in time. And Another instance was with Philadelphia, directed by Leinsdorf, with the Brahms again, Brahms' Fourth Symphony in summer. So there are certain performances that sort of grab you and stay with you forever.
Yeah.
I am interested in listening to new music, but I'm less adventuresome that, like the lady that talked earlier, that she's interested always in new pieces. I think that's wonderful, but you have to have the wherewithal, if you will, or the boldness to listen to it.
Thank you. I think that
somebody said all music once new.
Yes. I've tried to emphasize this in our talks, that the best thing that you can do is to just listen. Open yourself up, listen, and try to discern, how you feel, what the composer's communicating to you, and all of these things. Just listen, let go, and listen. And you'll do yourself a great service by doing that. The composers are always communicating something to you. They're always communicating something. And you may say, well, I don't get it. I don't understand what that is. But then listen to another recording of it and listen. They're telling you something. This is, that's what's so wonderful. And having the intellectual curiosity to allow yourself to do that, no matter what the music is, no matter what it is. That's in any music that we can listen to. It's so important. It's so important. And when it's played well, when it's executed in the best fashion. And I was talking about my commissions, and it's very important in choosing people playing new music that they're very committed to playing new music, so that they can communicate this new art form in a very caring way to enable you to understand what's happening. It's very important. It's very important. And the same goes down the road for Beethoven. If you have this care about what's happening in the music as a performer, and you're sharing it, which is what all of our artists are doing, they're sharing this with us. What a gift it is to accept this and to understand this. It's wonderful. That's what it's all about. Anywho, anything else?
Thank you very much, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Derek.
This was a nice first go of it.
Yep.
It worked well.
Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week. And again, it's another program on Schubert, and it's the late works.
Okie dokie.
We'll be there.
Have a good night.
Good night.
You too.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Let's leave.